Late 1776 was perhaps one of the lowest and most difficult times of the American Revolution. Washington and his forces that had once numbered almost 20,000 men had now dwindled to less than 3,000. They had suffered humiliating defeats at the hands of the British in the Battle of Long Island in August 1776, the Battle of White Plains in October 1776, and the Battle of Fort Washington in November 1776. Each loss forced Washington to retreat until they crossed the Hudson River and fled across New Jersey to avoid being surrounded by the British. To add to the misery, the soldiers were poorly clothed, ill-equipped, and starving. It is said that in their retreat, blood marked their footprints, and while the colonial army ran, the British in pursuit took command of New Jersey. By the time the Americans reached the Delaware River and crossed into Pennsylvania on December 7, 1776, their suffering and exposure were at the worst, and morale among the troops was spent. Sickness and desertion dwindled the ranks daily. General Washington wrote in a letter to his brother John, "I think the game is pretty near up." On December 20th, 1776, he wrote the following in a letter to Congress, quote, "10 days more will put an end to our existence unless some speedy and effectual measures are adopted by these states for our relief." End of quote. A substantial measure of that hope for relief came not in the form of material aid from the states, but in another, very unlikely way. Powerful words. Traveling with the Continental Army in their miserable retreat across New Jersey was a 39-year-old civilian, twice married, widowed, and recently separated, who was fully committed to the American Revolution. He believed the cause of the Americans was just before God and came personally to witness firsthand their sacrifices for freedom. He was with them when they crossed the Delaware. He saw their suffering and the squalor of their conditions in the winter camp. Moved with compassion and filled with a desperate desire to do something, he sat down and reportedly, on the head of a drum, began to write. The opening lines were these, quote, "These are the times that try men's souls." Indeed, they were. He saw and knew the unspeakable depths of their trial. He went on, quote, "The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country, but he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman." End quote. Don't give up, he's saying. Fight on. He continued, "Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." End quote. Is the fight for freedom worth it? Oh, yes, he is saying, it is. Don't give up. Of course it's hard. It has to be. And why? He continued, "What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." End quote. And then, as though to reframe their struggles beyond their own pain, he said, "If there must be trouble, let it be in my day. that my child may have peace." End quote. That passionate penman was Thomas Paine. Fresh off the immigrant ship from England, he had already written the pamphlet Common Sense months earlier that had inspired America forward into the Revolution. And now, at that critical moment when all seemed lost, Paine was there again. He returned to Philadelphia with his thoughts on paper. Robert Bell set it to type and published it. It was called The American Crisis, and that pamphlet changed the course of the war. Back in the camp on the Delaware River, General Washington ordered the pamphlet to be read to his men. It strengthened and inspired them, steeled their resolve. On Christmas night 1776, Washington led his troops boldly across the Delaware River and on to decisive victories at Trenton and Princeton. The Revolution was saved, thanks in a measure to the spirited words of Thomas Paine. There are two pressing conclusions to this story. First, who can doubt that Thomas Paine was raised up and prepared for just that moment, just as surely as the other patriots of his time? Second, who can doubt the power and inspiration of the written word of truth?